There we go. Hello, welcome to Transformation and Transcendence Roundtable Podcast. Joshua Morrow, therapist and life coach, is here with me. I think we're kind of going with a duo here today, or a duet. I don't know which one it is. We'll carry on, and hopefully we'll be able to give you some really helpful material to help you on your path of self transformation and fulfillment. So I thought I'd start today, Joshua and everyone, by talking about self will, pride, and fear, three major faults that from our shadow self or our lower self that obstructs our light and keeps us from being our best self, and discuss them and how to deal with them in our lives. But let me do a little business before I jump in. I keep forgetting to do the business. So please, if you're on YouTube or wherever you're at, whatever podcast forum you're at, please subscribe and like, and that will help us. And you can share too, that would be great. And if you want to reach Joshua for life coaching or for Reed or Ben, uh, I think the best number I can give you right now, email is fsolars, that's my name, Sollars, fsolars at msp.edu. And if you can also call 248-705-3798. 248-705-3798 if you want to reach us, because some of this material would work best if you had somebody helping you work with it. Okay, we also have a new book out called uh, Food for Thought, Psyche, Spirit, and Soul. Joshua has a contribution in the book. It's a series of stories and anecdotes, you know, uh, points of view from some of my sessions that I received, just human interest stories, poems, sayings, that kind of thing to help uplift and inspire for your spiritual and emotional development. Okay, thanks. So, getting back to what we're going to talk about today, pride, self will, and fear. These are three major faults that obstruct spiritual development. And when we posit the other side, the virtues that would correspond with pride, self will, and fear, pride would be dignity, human dignity, self valuing, self liking, and easygoing sense of your place in the world, right? This dignity. Self will would be kind of an easygoing assertion and capacity to be active in life and to help others and to move your life forward, to take on kind of the issues of life in a rather joyful way, even when there's pain, that you meet the pain and you move through it. So it begins to be a more positive, life becomes a more positive experience as you accept pain and move through it. A corresponding thing with fear, virtue with fear, would be courage, that you have the courage to do these things. You develop resilience. You meet pains, you meet struggles with resilience and a positive attitude. And, your dependency reduces so that you can be yourself in the world in spite of the worldly winds or other people that may think otherwise of you or your positive kinds of ways of being in the world. You manage to handle all that, so that's courage. So we have dignity, easygoing assertion and positive aggression, and then we have courage as complements to the pride, self-will, and fear. So what is pride? Pride is this, we don't mean pride as in terms of self-confidence, self-dignity. That's again why I compared it to the virtue. What we mean by that is hubristic pride, arrogant pride, the pride of elevating yourself above others, arrogating yourself so that you are more important in your own mind than other people, that in some sense what you do top other people, to win out over them, to triumph over them. It's a sense that You're not treating your neighbor as yourself, like the commandment would suggest. You're not loving your neighbor as yourself, but you're putting them in a different position, and you're trying to perhaps provoke envy or be up here high so that they look up to you and then they esteem you, and this is going to make you feel better about yourself. You think typically this does not work like that. It ties you to other people's point of view of you. You become more and more, you might say, chained to the opinions of others when you operate in life that way. Because what you're trying to do is you're seeing yourself through their eyes and get their approval. So you're into appearances when that is your orientation towards life. When you're in your own dignity, it's not appearances, it's being values. It's about the truth of the matter, trying to be kind, trying to treat yourself no less than the next person, no more, as best you can. Okay. Self will is not free will. We all have free will, and that's important. We need free will to make decisions, to grow. This is a basic human experience that we talk about, in psychology a lot, and it's talked about philosophically, and people know it to be true that we have this free will. But self will is more this forcing quality in life. It's a pushing, it's a demanding, it's maybe wanting things when they're maybe selfishly motivated. Again, it's to get your way, it's to go along with pride. It's connected with pride, this arrogant pride, where you're trying to get over on people and win and triumph. And life is a battle from that point of view that you have to conquer. You have to beat out the next person. It's a paranoid game when you're into your own self will. It's that forcing quality. Fear is an interesting point of view because in psychology, we understand fear as a development, often of trauma, psychic injury. You have optimal development, your fear levels go down. But we're all human and no one has perfect development. And even if we did, we'd probably still have some fear because that's a human condition. And sometimes fear is functional. Again, we've talked about this in the past. If a lion is chasing you, you better run. You better know. You better know it's time to move on. You don't get out of there. But we're talking more about this neurotic fear, where it's hard when you walk through life. You're worried about what people think. You're worried about the next thing that comes along. You're running ahead, trying to fix things that happen in the future. So you're not living in the now. You may be preoccupied with the past and trying to fix things in the past by some compulsion you have, some anxiety you have, trying to ward off certain experiences. So it's a way of living your life where you don't accept life on life's terms, but it has to be a certain way, and you're always preoccupied and fearful it's not going to go your way. So the alternate to that is a sense of peace and equanimity and resilience, where again, you don't have to have life go your way all the time. You can, I mean, it's great if it does sometimes, but if it doesn't, again, it's a signpost to something you need to learn in yourself. And if you go through life running away from feared experience, you're always running, right? Rather than feeling like, you can handle it. If you have some depressing news or sad news, unhappy kind of results or something, interviews or jobs or any kind of thing it might be, even health issues. If you feel like you can't stand it and you have to run from that, rather than you feel it, you understand what you can do to improve things, you keep a positive attitude, and you use the information you learn from your unhappiness to elevate yourself, to see what you've done, what's your part in your unhappiness, what you do to continue it, what maybe you've done to create it, what you can do to move forward that you've perhaps resisted from. Things like this. What perhaps, like for example, if you have an issue like with some people are life coaches here and psychotherapists. If your practice goes down, right, you can be very unhappy. Your practice goes down. You're trying to ward that off. You don't want to experience it. It's life's fault. I haven't gotten enough referrals, etc. Or you can say, well, what's going on? What can I do differently? What can I offer people differently? How can I present myself differently that may allow me to have the kind of clients I want or would like to serve, myself. And then so there you're trying to change it from a woundedness or a self-pity or a problem focused thing to solution focus, where you're trying to find what you can do to change. And if you approach things that way, they change. They may not change right this minute, but you start to change the way you're going about life in certain areas, and things improve. As long as you're willing to pay the price. I mean, maybe if you're a therapist or a life coach, maybe you got to get a little bit more training. Maybe not. Maybe it's attitudinal. Are you trying to give your best each time? Are you uh, coming from a up high position, trying to lecture people rather than listen and meet where they're at and then talk to them about things that you can offer to help. Things like that, you see. You may learn different areas. That's just one example. So these are really important elements in ourself. So, what about this arrogated pride? You see, if here's the thing, like Rumi's guest house, the way you want to deal with it is not to repress it, suppress it, and hope that it goes away. It goes under the rug, so it goes away. What you want to do, paradoxically, is let yourself know when you feel this arrogance. Let yourself know when you feel less, you might say, pained about your neighbor's troubles than your own, less humiliated than your neighbor's humiliation that you recognize empathically. Things like that, that you feel it. Even worse, maybe you feel joy, some kind of sense of happiness in other people's misfortune. Okay, this is human. It's not great. But as you bring this out and witness it and get psychic distance from it, feelings begin to change. They detoxify. And you can't change feelings just by willing them differently in the moment. Okay, I don't feel that way. Well, you feel that way. It's deeper than that. It's like the parasympathetic nervous system. It's deeper. You can't really change that very easily by willpower. But you can if over time, for instance, if you're too tense and you're type A personality and you got certain things going on, high blood pressure, you're just forcing and you're all tense all the time and you get physically ill. If you learn how to relax, if you learn how to let go of some of your forcing, let go of some of your fear that if you don't succeed so much, you're a horrible person, these kinds of unconscious, semi-conscious assumptions about yourself and your life, then over time you can relax and your parasympathetic nervous system may change a little bit. Same thing with feelings. As you see them, as you witness them, as you say to yourself, gee, I'd like to feel better, you could pray that the feelings change. You can also meditate. This is what I'd like. I would like this feeling of what? Hubris, or I like this feeling of disconnect or pleasure in someone else's misfortune to dissipate. I'd like to feel, what other people, caring about other people such that if they hurt, I hurt a little bit. I don't take pride in it, so much. And over time, as you go through life, it doesn't happen right now. It starts to change, and you start to feel your neighbor as yourself more and more, and love your neighbor as yourself more and more. And then you transcend, you see. In some sense, we are the neighbor, and the neighbor is us. And as you begin to empathically resonate with that on an experiential level, not just a theoretical level, now your universal consciousness opens up. You experience the world in yourself and yourself in the world and the oneness of all that. And it's quite a remarkable experience. When these feelings occur to you at times, it's like liberating. You get chills, you get tingles and stuff. So just for example. So anyway, that's a bit of a nutshell example. As you let go of your self-will and your forcing, and you don't have to force yourself away from unhappiness all the time or have to get your way and have people change for you, but you see what you can do to help you have your needs fulfilled in a realistic way, not a demanding, forcing way, by giving as much as you can get, by being part of life and giving your best to life. Life starts to come back to you. It's not forcing. It's offering your best self and waiting patiently sometimes for life to come back to you in ways that are fulfilling. And fear, as you give up your fear all along the way, and these faults are all connected, and you develop resilience and courage and the capacity to deal with frustration, and know that frustration won't kill you, won't harm you. You can handle it. You don't always have to have your way to be happy. People don't always have to do this or that for you to be happy. They don't always have to think you're the most special person around for you to be happy. You detach from that, and it's work. But then you feel this liberation. Yeah, that over time you begin to feel it. That you're a free person, and you walk through life with more ability to handle the ups and downs and the no's or the troubles or whatever, your frustration, with grace. Yeah. And then your higher self, your universal self, blossoms more. Yeah. Okay. Well, Joshua, I just let that rip, and hopefully it speaks to a lot of people in ways, and maybe we can hear what you think, and then we'll have a dialogue about it. How's that sound?
Sure. Yeah. Um, so I noticed I felt like there was like I really liked how you picked all three of these because there's an interconnection, I feel like. Like imagine if you have this self-will and it's like associated with having to force things or control things and have them be a particular way your way.
Yeah.
And
Right now, this minute. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And and I wrote so with that control, that need to control, I can see where that could also be linked to fear, where people have fear of this situation happening or this thing happening or this thing not happening. And so then they try to control and exert that force on will so that because of this fear. And so I don't exactly know how this pride, this arrogated pride, might play into that, where because I wrote down invisible wounds. So I feel like these come from wounds that people have that may not even know that they have. And that this need to control is, or this fear, this overwhelming fear, uh, or this pride comes from a space of themselves that they don't even see, that they don't even know. They just know that surface layer of, I need to control this. I'm afraid of this. I don't want this to happen. Or like, I'm better than people. Like, um, I have to be better than people. I have to be the best. And
If I'm not better, I'm worst. If I'm not the
yeah,
best, I'm the worst. There's kind of a duality, right?
yes,
I'm
yes,
either exalted or I'm shit, right? It can't just be a regular person who has self-confidence and has an opinion, right? That kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
But also makes mistakes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And um and so like one of the things that first stood out to me was the self-will and this like this forcing as opposed to like I'm trying to get my way and I'm trying to get it right now as opposed to meeting my needs. Because I think that comes from a space of people are trying to get their needs met. And there's some psychological energy internally that's really ramped up if they're put into a space where they're trying to control and trying to exert their will really intensely on a situation to get them this thing that they feel like they need. And they might want it really strong, but it's probably because of some unmet need internally. And so I guess I just wanted to bring up and ask about like, how do you distinguish between this healthy meeting of needs, denial of your needs, and forcing things to get your needs met?
Great question. Great question. Well, I'll take a stab at that one. So, three different alternatives. Yeah, you might say. So the forcing is the difficulty. It's the demanding. It's this urgency. Again, I was going to talk about desire too. Maybe we'll talk about that next time. But this sense, what there's a healthy desire, or healthy needs, healthy wishes, healthy longing, but it doesn't contain this demanding. You have to do it, or I'm going to perish. And manipulation, or pushing, or guilt tripping of the other person, or withholding and punishing them by you withholding yourself if they don't give you what you want. This all goes along with self-will and demands and forcing, as opposed to kind of, as I talked about, kind of a relaxed, easygoing will, which is that you want this. Maybe you want a person to like you, or you want to, get a good job or something. And so in that frame of reference, those are needs, vocation, taking care of yourself, people like you. Okay, fair enough. Those are not unhealthy. But if you come to them with, how do you get people to like you? Well, you like people, you give to people emotion. I'm not talking about financial necessarily. You give to people emotionally, you try to enjoy them, you display kindness when they need it, you're empathic with them. You begin to see that you often get it back. Now, if you don't get it back from a particular person, maybe you're barking up the wrong tree, or you can only get so much from that person, that kind of thing. And perhaps this is how good friendships are structured, and even good love, romantic relationships are structured, when people have this simpatico and they meet each other's needs voluntarily, right? But, certain friends you get so much from, and certain other ones you get more from, or different things from. And then you recognize that and you let it be, but you do your best. And then you have patience for when it comes. Yeah. If it never comes, maybe you say, well, okay, that's not going to come from that direction. And then you go to someone else. With a job, you make sure you're willing to pay the price. Are you trained? Is it something you can do? If it's not, what do you got to do to be prepared to do the job? How do you make yourself an asset on the job? How do you make yourself indispensable to them? What can you give? And if it's not too much, you try to find more, or try to develop more. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Maybe it's this air. We got bad air here in Michigan. It's
Yeah, those
really,
fires.
Canadian fires are really making the air quality poor. So anyway, those are a couple of examples. Now, the third alternative is the idea. These are different faults too. You withdraw above. You put distance, and you pretend you don't care and you don't need things, which isolate you from life. And it's just really not true, because we have human needs for social relationships and closeness and love, and to give love, right? That kind of thing. So if you do that, you're just kidding yourself, and you're kind of putting yourself in isolation. And then life gets harder and harder, and your loneliness gets harder and harder. And believe me, just what we probably this too, Joshua. If you look into loneliness, the longer people are lonely, the more bitter they get, the more angry they get. They get agitated. They don't know why. But just the loneliness causes anger, because you have an unmet need you're not even recognizing. Need for contact. And when you don't get it, you get frustrated and mad. And if you repress that, you don't know why you're bitter and angry and cynical, all that. But that's what happens with people. They get lonely, and then they get more and more negativistic, and perhaps more and more paranoid. People are just trying to take from me. They're not nice to me, because you're withdrawing from them, not giving of yourself, being cold to them. And what you get back is that, but you lose track of cause and effect. You don't connect the dots that you're creating that situation. And get a very unhappy person that way, until they start to see and connect the dots and see what they're doing. Does that help a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And so the other concern, at least with my practice, that I've seen is this denial of needs,
Yeah.
denial of these parts of ourselves. Oh, that I don't have that, or it's like, that's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm like. They can't really admit to themselves certain things, and that, I think, leads to some of these dynamics as well. Is that like, well, I'm afraid of that part of myself, or like, I have to control this in me. Like I have to deny this for whatever reason of past experiences. That this part of me is better than this part of me. And but that, like, I don't know. I guess I'm straying a little bit from this, but um,
It's okay. You're doing fine, actually.
there's this like um, this denial that I think that there's between the forcing and the allowing things to come. There's also this like, well, I'm choosing to deny myself this need or this thing for a reason, right? Or there's like, oh, I don't even have that. Like some of my clients, they don't even know about things going on internally. They don't even know they have these needs. Uh, they, all the needs are other people's needs is also a thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess I don't know how to tie this in. That's just where my brain is going.
Yeah, no, let me respond. So there's one element you talked about is renouncing. Sometimes you do need to renounce, at least temporarily. So I'm not going to get affection from this person, or I'm not going to get esteem from this person, or I'm not going to get this job, or I have kind of negative needs sometimes to be cynical and negativistic to people, which causes a vicious cycle. And you can renounce that. You can have this urge or this kind of negative need to want to express this stuff because feel dysregulated. You're so used to doing it all the time. But you can consciously contain it and renounce and say, "Well, I'm just not going to do that right now. It's not. I'm never going to do it." And sometimes it might be playfully acceptable to do it, but basically you can say, "I'm not going to do it." That's renunciation, right? Or I'm going to deal with my frustration of not getting this person's approval, and I'm not going to be tied to it. So I want her to like me. I want her, but she's not going to do it or like my opinion about something. She's not going to agree with me. Okay, I don't have to have it. That's renunciation too. That's different than somebody perhaps of long standing says, "Well, I don't really need people, or I don't need people much, or I, people treat me bad. I don't really care for people." They might not care for people, it's true, but that doesn't mean they don't long for people. So what do you do as a coach or a therapist? Is you reflect. When they get all dysregulated over little things, something doesn't go their way, they missed an appointment with somebody for lunch that they rarely have, and they're upset all to no end, dysregulated. Say, see, I think this was very important to you. And yeah, I think so. I think that's why you get so upset and you don't have many lunches or you don't have much contact with people. And it's clear that you're really, really upset about this. Oh, no. Well, sure, acting like it. It sounds like to me you feel like it. I think it's just hard for you. You get anxious to know that you care. You're anxious about knowing that you care and that you long for this. Maybe. So then you got something, right? Yeah. So it's an interpretation through reflection on what's showing up, in the room or on your screen these days. There's a lot of coaching and therapy that goes on the screen. But anyway, through their narrative, through their dialogue, right? You reflect on it, yeah, when it shows. And that's kind of how we do it. Sometimes you let them have, they don't care. Okay, because they really need to have that for the moment. But maybe the next session you reflect on it when their defense is down and they're not trying to defend their ego or something. Then it's easier to do these kind of reflections, and the people are more receptive. Yeah,
For sure, for
yeah,
sure. And so then that goes into the pride, self-will, and fear that people who have this arrogant pride, this self-will, and this fear are typically like outside of the circle of people who have more healthy functioning, let's say. So the people with healthy functioning will be like, I don't really want to interact with these people. I don't really like that energy, you know?
yeah. Unless they're, I think, the two things. if they're at near the same, kind of more closer to the same level and they got enough friends, well, then they don't want to do it. Now, but sometimes it's somebody in your family, for example, somebody you've known a long time. You try to do the best you can because you care about them, despite the fact that they have porcupine quills and stuff. You try to care anyway. Yeah. But it's not somebody you meet that you're going to be really say, oh boy, I want to have a good friendship with that person. That doesn't usually happen. But it may be, again, somebody that you care about long-standing, and you deal with them that way. Another one is if you're much higher and your relationship is asymmetrical, higher in development, mature. I don't know. I don't mean this in an irrigated way, but you're more mature. You're better off, and you can handle some of this stuff, right? You can. So they're a little porcupine, yeah, okay, and maybe it's a work relationship that's asymmetrical or something like that, and so you are more therapeutic for some reason. I don't know, maybe they're in your church or your mosque or something, and you're trying to help somebody. You approach them differently, and you deal with some of their slings and arrows that they throw your way. And okay, you may not have great friendship, but you may have some level of communication, cooperation, kindness, interactiveness with them. That's important to them because you're a leader. You're trying to help them, and that's something you choose to do, right? That's a little different, but you're probably not going to have a lot of mutuality with that person where they're symmetrical and they get you and you get them, and basically you're kind of on the same level, you might say, or in the same arena where you understand each other a lot. Those are the kind of people that we usually become friends with, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm kind of speaking for the people who might recognize some of these qualities and sort of speaking to that. And then, so then this process of transforming these things, um, I wrote down the invisible wounds because my orientation is there's wounds that are behind it. And if you heal the wounds, then that maladaptive pattern goes away. And um, someone's knocking on the door. Give me a sec.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So that happens in these these days. We get interrupted.
Okay, well, the room reservation changed, I guess. I'll have to
Okay.
send an email. Um, so um, that the uh, there's a time space. So like when we're processing these things, like in sessions, sometimes I have clients that don't want to go places really badly. And one of the reasons is this emotional carryover. Like they don't want to they want to one, they don't want to feel the feeling at all, typically. And then two, they don't want to feel it and then not be able to put it back in the box, to be able to like contain it and leave the session not feeling still re-regulated. And I think that in wondering about how we can work and talk about these things and start to process and try to transform and change these things, like that consideration of time and how like it's a negative experience often going into these places, but then how do we come out feeling re-regulated so that we can carry on and sort of keep that contained in that space?
Yeah. Well, that's another good question. And so they may have had childhood hurts, even trauma, right? And sometimes when we review the trauma and grieve the trauma and see how we've developed negative patterns from the psychic injury or the trauma, such as shame-based behavior, which is having dependency on everybody else to like us because we don't like ourselves very much. Okay, so that's kind of how that works in one example of how it works. And some people want to review their trauma independently of the events in their life right now, which happens sometimes. Some of these therapies like EMDR, trauma therapy, you can do that, and some people want to do it. They're ready to go, right? But many people don't want to go there like that. You have to go to the here and now, find the problem that they're facing. Maybe they have social anxiety, for example, and they go in a room and they think everybody doesn't like them. And so they kind of they don't want to be there. They think people don't like them. But they don't know. See that they're probably repressing their own antipathy, their own judgments, their own negativity. All they see is their fear. And so what one needs to do then, as a helper of whatever kind, is to begin to help them see that they're probably they probably have within them some of the same things they fear that they might get in the room. Judgments, just dislike. Basically, people fundamentally dislike them. Well, if they start to look at themselves, and you talk about their anxiety about perhaps seeing this in themselves, which is their shadow, right? And start to transform their shadow and start to let it go, recognize it, and over time let it go. Pretty soon, maybe not that soon, but soon enough, the room starts to feel less threatening. And they may also, in the process of talking about their antipathy, their judgments or criticism, they may talk about woundedness, the critical parents who they've internalized their voices. And then you say, okay, we need to challenge that, You're a good person. You have these strengths and all that. So you've internalized some of that. And part of what's happened too is that you've taken the wound, the hurt, and you've let it cause this love outrage, I call it, this anger, because you're wounded and you think everybody else is kind of going to be like them. So you're judgmental. You want to rise above them. You want to arrogate yourself so that you don't feel woundedness. You feel invulnerable when you arrogate, which isn't true. There's another cognitive distortion, and you challenge that, and then over time, life feels safer, right? So you're working on the past wound and the here and now trouble kind of simultaneously, but you kind of back into it in a softer way than just reviewing their history. Yeah. Because most people don't want to just review their history. They say, "Oh, that's stupid stuff." But if you start to connect the dots a little bit, then it comes naturally. It's not so stupid. It feels more self-evident. It feels more experience near without having to apply theory to it, to start, right? Yeah. That's kind of how it works best, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So unless you're a trauma therapist, then sometimes you go right after it. That's different. People come in often then wanting to work on their trauma. Let's talk about it right now. But a lot of people, maybe most people, don't want to do that just like that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. 100%.
Okay. Any last thoughts, Joshua, before we're getting near the time we have to stop? We have to stop, I know.
No, I think that was a good time.
Okay, yeah, I thought so too. And we applied it. What was really good here is we applied it to some case examples and different issues that may arise in treatment or coaching. And so hopefully that'll be helpful to people. So it's a way to transform your shadow and become change the shadow elements into something more virtuous. Pride into dignity, a self-will into easygoing kind of positive aggression and assertion, and fear into courage and resilience. So this is what we want, and we've sort of outlined some of the processes. If you review the video, you'll see them again. Some of the processes and how to do that. Okay, so thanks everybody. Thanks, Joshua. We'll see you next time.
See ya.